Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome to today's episode of the Mystics Path podcast. I'm actually snuggled up on my sofa today recording this episode, which is unusual for me. Usually I would be at my desk, but it's been raining for 3 days straight in Bali, and it's just one of those days where I just wanted to get my duvet on the sofa and record my podcast from here. So no video today. I am, basically practically in my pajamas and snuggled up on the sofa. So today's episode is inspired by a new friend of mine called Fern. She's currently living in the villa next door here in Bali. I live in a complex of 3 villas, and I've decided to name this villa complex the Priestess Palace because every single person that has ever lived here is a priestess and holds priestess energy. So it's very interesting who comes in and out of this villa complex. And right now, my neighbor is currently away. Paige from Prism and Fleur, she's actually been on the podcast. She's away at the moment. So this beautiful soul called Fern has moved in, and she asked me a question today while we were at the gym. She said she wanted to know more about how I hold ceremony, how I set up space, and how I create that experience for people. So I said to her, thank you so much, because you've just inspired me for what I want to share on the podcast today, because my mind was pretty blank of what I wanted to share today. So we can thank Fern for today's episode. So, my intention for today's episode is for it to be a source of inspiration for those of you who are feeling that you would potentially like to hold ceremony someday. Now, this could be in a one-to-one setting with a client that's paying you for your services. It could be for a one-to-one client that is not paying you. Perhaps you're giving away some offerings for free, or you're starting to work with new modalities or new gifts or whatever it is, and you're wanting to start holding ceremonies. Or this could be holding ceremonies for your friends, having your girlfriends over and saying, I'm going to hold ceremony for us tonight. Or it even could be in a family capacity, holding like a little mini ceremony or ritual for your family. So the way that I'm going to deliver this podcast episode today is I'm going to give you a real life example of if I was holding a group ceremony for, say, 12 people. 12 people were coming to a group experience in person with me. And my intention for this is that it is a source of inspiration for whatever kind of ceremony you want to hold, whether that is one-to-one, whether that's an intimate ceremony with friends, whether that's a group ceremony like this, whether it's holding, 50, 100, 1,000 people in ceremony. So my intention is that this information can be utilized for a variety of different ceremonies. Okay, so first of all, what is ceremony? Well, ceremony to me is creating a deeply sacred space for people to drop into their own soul wisdom, essentially, and to connect with self and to connect with others if that's something you want to do. But that's my definition of ceremony, is to create a sacred space for people to connect with self. So if I was to create a ceremony for 12 people, the most important thing when creating any kind of in-person experience for people, or this could be translated online actually as well, is to create as much of a safe space as you can for those clients. Now, obviously, it's impossible to say that we are creating a safe space for people because we don't know what their traumas are, we don't know what their triggers are, we don't know what they've moved through in this lifetime. So a safe space to one person could be an unsafe place to another person. But what we want to be doing as space holders is creating as safe a space overall for humans to step into, okay? So initially, to do that, if someone signs up to an event with you or a one-to-one or whatever it is, first things first is very clear communication, like really calling through your own masculine energy of, okay, what do they actually need to know in preparation for this ceremony? So what do they need to bring? Do they need to bring particular clothing? Do they need to bring water with them? Do they need to bring a journal, a pen? Like, Do they need to bring anything with them? What do they need to wear, etc., etc.? So initially, once they say yes to sitting in ceremony with you, letting them know exactly what they need to bring. And this is going to put their mind at ease. And for some ceremonies, you might need them to bring quite a few things. And for others, it might be like, just bring yourself. Everything else is taken care of. So just making that very, very clear to them as soon as possible so that they can start to prepare that, and letting them know exactly the location, how to get there, where to park, logistical things, so that they feel as safe as possible before they come to your experience. Because what you need to remember is that often people will come to, especially an in-person ceremony, people will come and they may not know anyone there, and they may have never been to something like what you're creating, but the energy called them to come. So we really, really, really need to, as space holders, be creating a really safe experience for their humans. Their souls are fine. They know exactly why they need to come to your ceremony, but their humans, maybe experiencing fear or nervousness, and we want to make sure that that process leading up to your ceremony feels as good as possible for them in their body and their nervous system. Okay? So the way I would do this is, I have an online booking system, so people book in and then immediately they receive an email letting them know you're in, confirming their space, you are in. This is what you need to know. This is what you need to bring. This is the location. And I will email you again 24 hours before the event. If you have any questions, respond to this email. So, and I'll also just say thank you so much for, signing up to this event. So that's pre-ceremony, prepping them. And then again, I would, just check in with them 24 hours before, letting them know all the details, making sure they have everything that they need, and, reminding them to arrive 5 or 10 minutes early so that we can start on time. Because, often people are late to in-person experiences. So if you're hiring a space, this can be quite challenging as a space holder if you lose, 10, 15 minutes at the beginning, because time can collapse quite quickly inside of an energetic ceremony. So making sure that people are there on time and you're ready to begin, exactly at the start point. Okay, next thing. So how do you need to prepare for the ceremony? So what I would suggest is for you to sit in your own sacred space, whether that is in meditation. If you have an altar, you might want to sit in front of the altar. You might want to go to a cafe, walk to the beach, do whatever you need to do to really drop into your own inner wisdom, inner intelligence, and open your own channel of like, okay, how do I want to run this ceremony? And what do I need to get in preparation for this ceremony so that I am prepared on the day? So for example, in many of my ceremonies, actually all my ceremonies, I will buy flowers for the altar. I will want candles for the altar. I will want incense for the altar. I'll want particular sprays or aura cleansing, different aura cleansers, and then particular trinkets, crystals, oracle card for the actual altar. So I will speak into altars in a moment, but it is nice to have a centerpiece, especially if you're going to be sitting in circle with people, just so that there's an energetic central point. So once you've figured out, or once you've decided what do I want on my altar, starting to prepare all of that, making sure that you have everything that you need, and also starting to prepare or get ready for, what you're going to bring through in the ceremony. So using my ceremonies as an example, many of you listening to this will have been to my ceremonies, whether they're online or in person, but something that I really love to put a lot of energy into is the soundscape. So the music playlist for the energy healing part of the ceremony. So I will tune in what kind of energy wants to come through for this, what kind of frequencies do I want to be playing through the music to support with the different energies that I call into the space, the different higher energies, and then starting to prepare that playlist so that, on the day, that's all ready to go. Okay, so basically, what are all the things that you need before ceremony? Making sure, is there a speaker in the hall that you're renting? Or do you need to take your speaker? Is it fully charged? So I would say start prepping this at least a week out, and then you can start to bring everything together so that on the day you are as relaxed as you possibly can be as a space holder. Okay, so it's the day of ceremony. You arrive at the hall or, the location, wherever it is that you're holding ceremony. First things first is setting up the space energetically. So what I would do is I would go into the space. Immediately, you're going to feel how it feels to step into the space. So even if the energy feels really good, I would advise that you do your own clearing and cleansing of the space. So I would usually use sage to do this. You can use Palo Santo, and I also use my own energy to do this. So I'll give you 3 different techniques here. First of all, you can just burn some sage around the space. Before you light the sage, ask the sage if it's happy to work with you to cleanse the space, because the sage has its own consciousness. So you can work with the consciousness of the sage together to cleanse the space. Same thing with the Palo Santo. So those are 2 physical plants that you can work with to clear the space. And then if you want to use your energy, what I would do, I'm actually being shown this in my third eye. I would stand in the middle of the room, close down my eyes, send my rooting cord, or send my roots from my root chakra all the way down into the earth. I'd actually send it down through my legs. I'd do this standing, send it down through the legs all the way through the earth to the center of the earth and find an anchor point. And then I would open up my chakra system. So I would then move energy up from the earth all the way through the chakras to the crown of my head. And then I would send energy up all the way to source, connect up with source. And then I would breathe through both the anchoring cord and the pillar of light up to source. I'd breathe through both of them. So breathing through the crown of the head and breathing through the feet, so that you're bringing in earth energy and source energy into the heart. So breathe all that energy into the heart, let that be the central point. And then on the exhale, send that out into the entire room. Yeah, and this is how spirit is showing me that you can do that. Okay, so that's a final way that you can clear space if you don't have sage or Palo Santo on you. That's a way you can do it with your own energy. So thanks, spirit, for bringing that through. And then I would energetically create protection around the space. So creating like very strong boundaries around the space. So the way I do this is I call in the 4 archangels, and the archangels I work with are Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, and Uriel. Ask them to come into the 4 cardinal points or the 4 corners of the room and place a golden dome of light over the space and also under the space. I like to create a dome around any space that I'm creating. And I will set the intention here that only the highest frequencies of love, light, and the purest intention may enter this space, and the energies that love us all unconditionally. And anything that is not of that frequency, intention, or vibration must leave immediately. And I usually feel that happen. Like I feel the dense energy leave. Because when you set a strong intention like that, by universal law, these energies have to leave. So that's really, really important that your space is set up so everything has been cleared out, and then you've got this force field of protection around the space that only that is what is of the highest light and loves every single soul that will be in your space unconditionally can enter. And then you know that like boundaries are up. I would also call in Archangel Metatron because he is like an additional bodyguard to support the other archangels. So guys, I'm just giving you like all of all of my secrets. Well, they're not secrets. Free information, you can use whatever you want. But this is literally how I will create a ceremony in space. So if this all feels like really overwhelming and too much, you do not need to do this. I'm just telling you exactly what I do. I'm really sorry, there's some dogs barking outside, so I'm hoping this is not too distracting and my mic's not picking it up. Okay, so once I've done that, I will light a candle for source, and I will start to set intention for ceremony and call in higher energies. So when it comes to intention setting, you choose the intention. Like, what's the intention that you're holding for everyone that comes into your space? So a very simple intention, which would be really beautiful, would be something along the lines of, I set the intention that everyone that enters this space today receives whatever their soul is supposed to receive for the highest good of them and the highest good of all. So that's a very simple but powerful intention. But depending on what kind of ceremony you're doing, your intention will probably be quite different to that. If you're holding a special ceremony that's all about resetting the nervous system and supporting people to release stress, then perhaps your intention will be a bit more specific around that. So my intention for today is that every soul or, every nervous system that enters this space releases stress and is reset, and that everybody receives what they need to receive for the highest good of all. So you will literally know what to say, okay? Or what to speak internally or speak out loud as you're setting your intention. And then I would start to call through whichever energies I want to work with in the space. So this is called invocation, and this is where you can quite literally, it's as simple as it sounds, start calling in who you want to call into the space. So an example in my space would be, I like to work with Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, Jesus, Isis, Hathor, Sekhmet. So I would literally stand in the middle of the room. I would literally say, I call in Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, Yeshua, Goddess Isis, Sekhmet, Hathor, and I would just start to list out who I wanted to invite into the space. Lakshmi, Ganesha, our galactic brothers and sisters, healthy ancestors. It is important to say healthy ancestors, by the way, because some of our ancestors are not of the highest vibration. So, if you're going to call in people's ancestors, just make sure that it's the healthy ones coming through. Sisterhood of the Rose, Brotherhood of the Christ. There's so many different energies that we all work with. There might be specific shamanic energies you work with. You might be working with particular animals. You could call in the dragons, or you could be calling in wolf medicine of a drum if you're working with a drum. So you will know what medicines you work with. If you work with different oils, you might want to call in the energy of frankincense, the energy of the rose. So even as I'm saying this to you, you will know if you're supposed to call in and invite in particular energies into your space. And this is really, really powerful, you guys. Okay? So that is invocation. That is how I set up the space energetically. Then let's talk about the altar. So an altar is not 100% necessary. If it doesn't feel right for you to have an altar in your ceremony, you don't need to have an altar. You will know if an altar is appropriate in your space. But if you do have an altar, my recommendations are that you have the 5 elements on your altar. And those are fire, water, earth, air, and ether. So I'll give you some examples. So for fire, you would have a candle on your altar, okay? For water, you might just have a little bowl of water. You might have, an aura spray. You might have some sacred water from a sacred site. I will usually have water from Lourdes, where I visited, that holds the energy of Mother Mary. I also have water from Chalice Well that holds the energy of Mary Magdalene. I've also had water from the Jordan River that holds the energy of Yeshua. So there might be particular, sacred waters that you want to bring, or you may feel called to go to the ocean and get some salt water and have that with you in ceremony, or go to a lake or a waterfall. So have some form of water on the altar. Something from the earth. So if you are buying flowers for your ceremony, then obviously there'll be flowers on the altar, so that ticks off the earth. You might have crystals. They're also of the earth. You might feel called to pick up some leaves or some twigs or a beautiful stone when you're out walking. So just anything that can bring in Mama Earth onto your altar, okay? And then the last two are air and ether, and these are kind of intertwined. So I would burn incense for this. So incense would tick off the air and the ether, okay? So I'd have the 5 elements on every single altar, and then just a reminder that every single piece or every single item that you place on the altar holds energy. So you always want to be really intentional with what you're placing on your altar, okay? And I'm just being reminded to share something. Actually, I'll share that now or I'm going to forget. People might feel called to bring something to your ceremony. Like often this will happen, like before people are coming to a ceremony, they may just like feel intuitively, oh, I think I'm just supposed to take this crystal, or I feel like I'm supposed to take this with me. So you can let people know this before ceremony, like if you feel called to bring anything, any crystals, etc., or a plant, etc. Do this. In the past, I have sometimes asked people to bring something from the earth, whether that is a leaf, a rock, a shell, a flower, and then when we open space, I ask them to place it on the altar as a gift, and they don't get it back. So that's something nice to do. And then as a space holder, the next day you can go and give that back to earth. So, and that can just be a nice thing to do in ceremony. So it's just an idea there. Okay, slight sidetrack. Okay, I'm coming back to where we were. So that is setting up the altar. And as you're setting up the altar, you will just know where everything is supposed to go. It will be intentionally placed in a specific place for a particular reason. And even if you don't know why, just trust your intuition with how you want to set up your altar. If you're working with shamanic energies and shamanism, there is specifics around north facing, south facing, east and west. That's not how I work with energy, so I can't speak into that from experience. But if that's something you're interested in, I would just recommend doing some research on that, and then you can check on your phone where true north is in your space and on your altar. I feel like that was significant for one of you listening, or a few of you listening. Okay, so at this point, energetically your space is created. Okay, so it's a safe, energetic space for people to come and experience what they're meant to experience. And you've also created this central altar, if you're creating an altar, and you've set the intention for the ceremony. Okay, and then your guests arrive, your clients. Guests sounds like, I don't know, they're going to a party, which I guess your ceremony could be a party. But anyway, your clients arrive. It's going to be very important to give them a warm welcome when they arrive, because some of them are going to be really nervous to come to ceremony with you, especially if they don't know anyone. So, just do whatever feels right for you, but just give them a really warm welcome in whatever way feels authentic to you. I will always hug people when they arrive, strangers, people I know, everybody gets the same welcome. They'll get a hug from me, I'll introduce myself, and then I will say to them, find a mat inside the space. If there's mats set up for them or cushions or whatever it is, I'll let them know where I'm sitting. I'll say, I'm just sat there, but you can choose any other space that calls you. And then they just go sit down. Okay. Once everyone's arrived, I'll shut the door and I'll go sit down. And, actually one thing that could be nice to do, you might want to have tea or something like that that's ready for people to pour. So when people arrive, you can go grab a cup of tea and find a seat. That can be a nice thing to do as well. So then I'll go sit down. I might close my eyes actually and just take a breath. And people will be watching you as the space holder. So I do quite like doing that, sitting down, might just take a breath, and then I'll look around at everyone and welcome them to ceremony. So welcome them to ceremony, introduce yourself first. A lot of people forget to do this, do introduce yourself. So, I will say, hi everyone, I'm Susie, I've met a few of you before, there's some new faces here, welcome. And thank you for trusting the soul call to be here today. So just acknowledging it's just thanking and acknowledge them for being there. People might have had to get babysitters or someone to look after their kids, or it might be really, really scary for them to be in a ceremony for the first time. So really acknowledge them for, being there and thank them for being in your space. Then I would go straight into logistics. I'd just be like, let's get the boring things out of the way. The toilets are over there. If you need water at any point during the ceremony, that's fine. You can get it. If you need to leave the room and go to the toilet at any point, you don't need to ask me, just go. And that's usually all I need to share, like help yourself to tea. Then I will go straight into how the ceremony is going to run, because what is so important is, as I've said, creating safety for your clients. So telling them exactly what's going to happen. So I would say, okay, I'm going to share with you how ceremony is going to run today. First, we'll be dropping into a mini meditation just to ground us and bring our energies into the space. Then we'll energetically open the space together. We'll open circle. Then there'll be some journaling. There's some journaling prompts that has channeled through for today's ceremony. Then we'll drop into an energetic experience. I'll speak more on that when we get there. Then we'll do a little share and then we'll close. So they know exactly what's going to happen and they know the order. Okay, so once you've done that, my recommendation is dropping them into something soft to settle them into the space first. So in my spaces, I'll always do a grounding meditation and I will guide them to drop their anchoring cord down into the earth and take some long, deep breaths. And this will really settle them into the space. You will feel the difference when they come out of the meditation. And this also is for you as a space holder. I cannot tell you what this will do for your energy as a space holder as well. So this is as much for them as it is for you. So this could just be like a 5-minute meditation. If you need a script for that, you could write out a little script so that you can read that. Or if you feel comfortable just channeling something, then just trust your channel. That's what I do. That's the first thing I would do in a group ceremony to bring all of our energies into the space. Okay? If that doesn't feel right or resonate for you, then just do something that's going to drop them into their body. So that could be a little bit of movement, like maybe rolling their heads and like do some cat cows and a few yoga poses, or it could be some gentle breath work, or it could be pouring some sacred cacao and getting them to connect with the cacao, drink the cacao. Anything that's going to take them from the outside world to their body. That's what we want to be doing. And then, beyond the body is the soul. So we want to be just bringing them inwards. In yoga, we call this pratyahara, withdrawal of the senses. So we just want to be bringing them inwards towards self. I'm going to give you an example of something not to do. I've been to a ceremony before where the first thing that we did in ceremony was we went round one by one and we had to answer like a specific question from these 3 questions that were on a piece of paper. And they were like really deep, quite scary, vulnerable questions. And I could see what was happening to everyone's nervous system as we did this. Somebody in the room actually broke down crying and had to leave the space. And I remember walking out of this ceremony and saying to a girlfriend, like, that was, the word I'm actually receiving is like, that was the most dangerous opening that I've seen to an energetic ceremony ever I've experienced. Because people's nervous systems were so jolted straight away. They had to speak in front of lots of people they didn't know. They hadn't been dropped into the space properly and they had to share something super vulnerable. So that's a no. Do something to bring them into their body, okay? So once that's done, then I would recommend you open the space by everyone sharing their name. And then this starts to build the community energy in the space. So something that I really love to do is everybody has a candle in front of them. And what I love to do is once they've come out of the meditation, I just say, okay, we're going to open circle now and plant all of our energy into the space. So I will say, I'll go first and I'll show you what we're going to do. And I'll say, we're going to light the candle. As we light the candle, we're going to say our name. And I was like, and I really like this because the candle is then an extension of like your soul. And you can ask them a question like, what called you here? Is a really, really good one. Like, what called you to ceremony today? And, maybe I'll say, what's your intention? But just name and what called you here today is really nice. Or during the meditation, often I'll ask a couple of questions like, how is your heart feeling in this moment? So I might then bring that into the opening circle. So it might be, what's your name? Light the candle. What's your name? What called you here? And when you ask that question, how is my heart feeling today? What did your heart say? This is a really good one, actually, because then you can gauge the energy that's actually existing in the room and how people are coming into the space, like how their hearts are feeling. So once you've done that, you be the example, you light the candle, and I would be like, hi, everyone, my name's Susie. What called me to this space is I was guided to create the ceremony for you all. And when I tuned into that question, what I received was grateful. That's often what I receive because I'm just grateful that people are in my space. And then I will put the candle into the altar. And that's just what I like to do. But, you may not want to put it into the altar, but I quite like to put it into the altar because then it's like my energy is in the altar. And then I'll hand the lighter to the next person and then they will go. And then everyone shares, and it's just like a really beautiful way to open space. Okay. And then if you're doing something quite, it's 444. If you're doing something quite specific in your ceremony, like you're working with a specific energy, like, I don't know, feminine embodiment, let's use as an example, you might want to question in opening circle, like, how do you feel being in your feminine energy, for example, or like, what does feminine embodiment mean to you? You might want to ask a question that's a little deeper for people to really think about that and then connect with the rest of the group. But it's totally up to you what you want to bring through for that. But just make sure that it's soft, okay? Especially as we're starting ceremony, people are still going to be like grounding into the space. Okay, and then once you've done that, you've brought through everyone's energy into the space has been opened, then that's when you go into like bringing through whatever medicine it is that you want to bring through for ceremony. So whatever it is that, you do, whether that's teaching something, whether that's dropping into energy healing, whether that's like an embodiment experience, whether that's like somatics, movement, dancing, whatever it is that would come in at this point in the ceremony. And this would be what I would call like the peak point of the ceremony. So if you imagine a peak, like if you imagine like, a mountain's not a good example, but like a wave of music is like probably a better example. And when they enter ceremony, they're at the bottom of the wave. You want to bring them up to a peak point, and then you want to bring them safely back down to where they were when they came in. So they're all packaged up nicely when they leave. So this point in the ceremony would be your peak point. So for me, this would be holding an energetic experience. I would actually do some journaling normally before that, but you can do the same, but this is like leading them into the peak experience. So I'm going to tell you what I would do if I was when I'm working with energy. So at this point, you want to tell them what's going to happen. Okay, so an example I'll just tell you what I would say. So I would say, okay, we're going to be moving into the energetic experience now. And I would ask who has received energy work before and who hasn't. And just like gauge the room. And then I would say, okay, when we're working with energy, I say in a moment, you're all going to lie down, and I'm just going to drop you in gently, and I'm going to start invocating, and I'm going to call in particular energies. So if you've never heard this before, it could seem a bit strange, but just surrender and just listen to what I'm saying. And then I would let them know, okay, there'll be music played throughout the experience. You may feel different things in your body. You may feel energy moving different ways. You may feel heat. You may feel cold. You may feel emotional. If you feel you need to cry, please cry. It's really important that you do. If you need me at any point, just wave at me. I'll come over. And I'll just basically list out the vast potentialities of what could happen when energy is moving through the space. Not too much that they start to have expectations, but just let them know like things that could happen. So, you may experience, I would say that in some instances, you can experience pain in the body. That is usually when energy is wanting to push through somewhere that's blocked. It should move through really quickly. But if it's not, just give me a wave and I'll come over and I'll support you. Okay. And I'd also say if anybody doesn't want to be touched today in ceremony, that's absolutely fine. When you drop in, I will ask and I'll be able to clock you if you don't want to be touched, and that's totally fine. And then that's about it. Just like letting them know that they're going to lie down and listen to music and energy work's going to be happening. Okay. Then this is what I would do if I was holding an energy experience. Everyone would lie down. I would guide them in. I would do the invocation. So again, starting to call through higher energies, ascended masters, galactics. These are all energies that I work with. So please be just mindful of who you're calling in, and only call in energies that you're comfortable working with and you have a connection with. And as I do this, sometimes I feel called to bring through someone that's like I wouldn't normally call through. Also, just trust that, because trust your intuition as you're doing that. And then whatever kind of ritual, ceremony, energy work, whatever the experience it is that you're holding for people, this is where the deepest level of trust comes in for you as a space holder. So I just want to remind you to trust the energy that you hold, trust the energy, trust the soul that you are, trust the way that energy is moving through the space, do what you're guided to do, especially if it doesn't make sense. If you feel you're guided to do something, you're like, oh, I'm not sure about that. And it doesn't make logical sense, this is a good indication that you're supposed to go and do that thing. Okay. And also really trust the client's higher selves, because the client's higher selves are the ones who are bringing through everything that they need. They're the conductor of what's happening. So you can really place trust in them. Oh, slight sidetrack. Definitely call in their higher selves when you do the invocation. So you would just say, and I call in the higher selves of every soul of every person that's here present today. Or I call in all of our higher selves. Okay, so then you do whatever you do, and I won't go into that because that doesn't feel necessary on the podcast today. And then once that's complete, bring everyone out slowly, bring everyone to seat, and then doing a final share at the end is really, really important to close out the energy. And you'll find that some people do want to share. Usually most people do want to share their experience. So once everybody is out of whatever experience you're taking them through, give them a few moments just to ground with their eyes closed and close out however you feel to close out. And then I would say something like, we're just going to share now. Whatever you want to share from your experience, that can be as much or as little as you like. If you don't want to share anything at all, that's totally fine. And this is really important because sometimes if people have like quite a big experience, they really need a moment to process on their own. So I will say if you don't want to share anything with the group, then you can just say namaste or like put your hands together and say thank you to the group. So that's just a really nice way of making it easy for that person just to, put their hands in prayer and just say thank you. So then everyone will share. I would allow a lot of time for this because people can get quite chatty. And if they've had a lot in their experience, sometimes they'll have a lot to share. So do allow at least 15 minutes for sharing at the end. And then that's it. You'll say your final words, thank everyone for coming, and close out the space. Now, one thing to know if you're doing an in-person ceremony, because the energy is probably going to feel so good in the space, it's going to be quite hard to get people out of the space because everyone's going to want to chat. So I usually will say, we have to be out of this space in 15 minutes. If anybody wants to help clear things away, you can do. Otherwise, just leave when you're ready. So, and then that completes ceremony. Everybody leaves. And then the final thing to do is to close out the space, okay? So at this point, I would stand in the middle of the room, I'd close down my eyes, and I would just say thank you to all of my guides, all of the higher energies that came through, all the higher selves of everyone who came to ceremony. And I would literally just reel off and thank whatever energies. And then I would, for me, because I do open lots of portals and energy in my spaces, I would say I close out all portals, windows, and doors that have been opened in ceremony today. So I close out all portals, windows, and doors that have been opened in ceremony today. And then I will say, and I reset this room to its original template, but at a higher frequency. And obviously you can say whatever you want for that, but I just like to reset the space, especially if you're hiring someone else's space. So just asking for the space to be reset, and then that's it. Thank the space. Oh, one thing that I'm receiving now is that I didn't mention in this podcast is wherever you're holding ceremony, it's really, really good and good practice to acknowledge the ancestors of the land. You know, wherever you're holding ceremony over the world, to acknowledge the ancestors and the spirits of the land, because there'll be some curiosity from those energies of what you're doing. So if you just let them know and acknowledge them at the beginning of ceremony and thank them at the end, that's going to be very helpful for, holding ceremony in certain spaces. So that's everything, loves. Thanks for tuning into this episode. This has been a really fun one to record, and I've loved sharing this with you. It's like more of a teaching, mentorship episode. And I want to remind you that if you are feeling the call to start holding space in whatever capacity, then please trust it. You are absolutely ready to start holding space. And I know it can feel scary. The unknown can feel scary. And obviously I've been there. I've held my first ceremonies. And I just think it's one of the most beautiful things that we can do in this world is hold space for other people to go through their own healing, their own activation, their own breakthroughs, and reconnect them to the truth of who they are. So you are ready. You can trust yourself and go and take your magic out there into the world. So final things I just want to share as we close out the episode is, obviously I've shared a lot in this episode, and I've basically just shared my process of how I hold space and hold ceremony, which is unique to me and the energies I work with. So take this episode as inspiration. If there were things that really resonated for you, like absolutely take those into your ceremonies and use those techniques. But if things didn't resonate and you're like, oh, that doesn't feel like right in my body, then trust that. Trust your own intelligence of how you'd like to do things, because that will create the best possible experience for your clients and the people that come and sit in your space. So that's everything, loves. Go and share your magic with the world, and until next week, I'm sending you love.